Hello，大家好，欢迎回到我的频道摸爬滚打，我是汪大彩。这一期的主题呢，我们来聊一聊人生巅峰的初级阶段。人生巅峰没错，就是那个当上 CEO、迎娶白富美、走上人生巅峰的人生巅峰，激不激动？意不意外？那千里之行，始于足下。好，那第一步就是要当 CEO。当 CEO 最简单的方式就是自己开一家公司，自己就是 CEO。简单说就是创业，没错。那一谈到创业这个话题呢，很多人就想到说，哎，我要去把我亲戚朋友全部都接了个遍，接到他们以后一看见我全部绕着走，然后不会再有人烦我，甚至于连我那些相亲对象那些看不上他，他又老是牛皮膏药一样缠着我的人，我一开口就问他借钱，借到他以后再也为什么这个手打借到他以后再也不敢来缠着我为止。借完一堆钱之后呢，然后找齐团队，找齐项目，自己去看一下人，在街上看一看，哎，哪些传单比较有效，哪些生意比较火，看一下什么东西，淘宝上什么东西卖得好，哎，铺货刷声望，哎，大概类似于这样子的。如果是技术创业呢，哎，找个牛逼点的工程师来，我们一起走向人生巅峰。基本上就是四人取经团队哈，那这样子是非常难的。然后一说创业，一两年，苦了吧唧的工作10几个小时、20几个小时，然后还不一定有收入，对，连续几年没有收入，然后也不知道路在哪里，然后反正总而言之就是对你的钱呐、那个心理状态啊、任劳任怨啊，然后高光远瞩啊、商业嗅觉啊等等等等的一个严峻考验，所以它成功率非常的低。但是这个社会总是需要有这么一些人来创业，来开阔新的事业，来推动生产力的发展，来推动社会进步。然后简单说就是增加就业率，解决就业问题。所以后面就有一票人，他搞出了那个孵化器，以一种成功者的心态来，哎，我来帮你解决。只要你是有才华、有理想、稍微有一点商业嗅觉，你没有商业嗅觉也没关系，我们有。反正看你只要有一点点那么出彩的地方，你就来吧。然后你缺哪个地方，我们给你补。补了之后，等你做大有钱了，你自己花钱来补全你的团队。那从某些方面呢，就是等于说师傅领进门嘛，就容易了很多，减少了很多试错成本啊，避免了很多坑啊，就过来人帮你指点。当然了，应该是有常理，他们从你的股权或者怎么样里面拿，反正就是孵化器了。哎呀，如雨后春笋。但一说到美国最有名的孵化器，其实就是 Y Combinator。但如果是在旧金山湾区本地的人，就应该都知道这孵化器的东西，Y Combinator 是最有名、最量产、对，就像富士康流水线那样子量产初创公司。但其实它的服务也并不是最好。那像这个节骨眼上，就在我准备想着我的职业生涯下一步的时候，就你说好死不死就有这么一家来聊我，来搞得我那心啊骚动的不行啊！我不断的，我要提醒我自己说，离骚，对，离骚，骚就是一颗非常躁动的心。我给我自己写了首《离骚》，不断提醒我自己离骚，要淡定，要沉稳。来，我们先看一下这一家，导播，这一家好嘞，这一家 Fractal Software，它专门有这么一个Entrepreneur Enrollment Program。然后呢，他就知道，反正就是拉了一堆工程师，拉了一堆从什么地方拉了一堆那种business development 或者是那种 investment bank 里面的高管什么来做 CEO，反正他选合适人做 CEO，选合适人做 CTO，基本上就是专门孵化那个技术导向型公司，轻资产类型，等于说你可以看到它是 SaaS 垂直的 SaaS，等于说就是那一种两个人，一个人拿一台电脑开始写代码，写完之后部署上线，然后看有没有钱赚，就是那种你要是不得了，你换个方向也容易，因为你也没有购置专门的设备，你也没有购置桌椅板凳啥乱七八糟的。你要是不得，你要是得了，哎，那感情好；那不得，那转向啊什么，或者是迭代啊什么都很容易。轻资产快速迭代，垂直 SaaS，所以基本上一开始两个团队就是两个人 CTO、CEO，他们好像是已经成产业了，我看他不是第一批。 他们就是一堆，我也不知道他们为什么会看上我，何德何能哈。你看他们会给你匹配，如果你是 CEO，他们给你匹配 CTO， 如果你是 CTO 给你匹配 CEO， 然后如果是匹配不成功，那就跟那个《非诚勿扰》一样，相亲一样。那匹配不成功呢，那交易不成仁义在嘛，那以后抬头好相见嘛，硅谷就那么大，对吧？尤其是有那种 entrepreneur mindset， 就是那种反正打死都要创业的那种人。然后呢，他们还会给你的那个初创公司提供个种子轮，就是你一进去开始搞公司第一天，他就给你一个种子轮100万。然后据说是第一轮 A 轮呢还能A 轮基本上是在第1年结束的时候，也就是说第1年结束之前你们只有100万，然后看你们决定怎么花。100万是现金哦，当然了，它有那股权的东西就看你的公司能发展到什么程度，能价值多少了。你想发2亿股也行，那你没发展起来不值钱而已嘛。但你可以看到它提供的服务包括了像招人啊，像产品研发，他们有专门一个做研究去看 market fit， 就是有什么东西做出来有市场的那种。然后他们还有 engineering 是什么东西啊？我看看。leadership team，那个这些东西都说的很模糊了，哎，算了，反正就是 engineering 也有支持，我其实不太懂是什么东西。然后还帮你怎么样推向市场，然后也许他们自己就有一些种子用户，等于说就是砸钱买用户那种。当然了，他们还会拉饭，然后当然还有馒头，馒头肯定有馒头。那具体是不是董事会，还是说创业导师不加入董事会，那我也不知道。可能你成功，他们会加入董事会，分你一杯羹，分你股权。那如果不成功，那就当聊过天，哎，我们就是一起战斗过的好战友了。那包括有个社区，一群创业者在一起，你从此不再孤单。还有人力资源啊、法律啊，包括一些管理啊、骂那些你不想去碰跟技术无关，但是如果你自己单枪匹马，你又必须花很多时间精力去碰的那些东西，现在他们全给你搞定了。反正你小子你就专门搞技术开发就行了。那大概是这样子。那么接下来的时间呢，我就给你们看一下，他们今天是跟我的第1轮互相见面、互相了解。那我给你看一下我跟他们的交互。那我们大概就先这样子。对，接下来大概是有30分钟左右，大家有点耐心。
But to be honest, I couldn't.
Yeah, it's in Chinese.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Exactly.
if you use some translation software, something, but essentially it's just an idea to get more traffic to e-commerce site, something like that.
Okay. Well, I mean, sounds like a good idea, and I'm glad to hear that you've thought about founding before. So
yeah, and I have experience like do pitch and demo at a fundraising round, something in front of interested like farms or farm managers or individual investors, something, and collecting feedback and iterate my idea and doing my sort of thing. It's like a couple of years ago.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, I'm excited to hear that you want to be a founder, and we'll be able to talk about how we go about doing that and seeing if it's the right call for you.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of just to kind of, hear it early, I love the overview, right? I love the career so far. And I guess I reached out because you're at YouTube still, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you actively looking to make this move if something works out, or are you just kind of listening?
Not really. I just started to think of my next step in my career. Yeah, but I get in touch with a couple of people. I mean, for the past couple of weeks, and hopefully we can get into the technical interview route, the first route, like this week or maybe or maybe in June. Yeah, because I'm gonna be on vacation for the next 2 weeks.
I missed that part. You're gonna be at location?
I'm gonna be on vacation for the next 2 weeks.
Cool. Me too. Look at us. Finally.
Nice. This is summertime. So so the thing is for the executive or founder something, and there are so many like incubator program anywhere. I want to know the difference between your program versus other incubator program. Even with Google internally, that have you heard of 120 or something? So that's the incubator as well, but it provides more stability that, okay, you can apply and build your product. But if you, for some reason, you fail, then you cannot graduate, then you can still get back to original team, something.
Good. Yeah, you definitely understand what this is. So we're different in a few different ways. And so I'll kind of kick the overview and then we can dive into each part, right? But I think the first thing about this is it's not an application process for, joining the cohort and then, ultimately succeeding or failing out. Instead, there's people like me, the talent leads, that are actively chasing down talented folks like you. And so we put you through an interview process. It's pretty quick. We'll talk about it, but it's only like 4 steps. And then from there, once you go through the interview process, you're actually getting a welcome letter to join our Entrepreneur in Residence program, our EIR program. And that's kind of there to facilitate a few things. It's the first step of you founding a company. Number one, all of the companies we found are co-founded by 2 people. There's a CEO and a CTO, so we don't do solo founders here. You have a CTO background, so the people in the program that are currently in the EIR program and folks that are on their way in as well, they would be the people you get a chance to match with as a CEO co-founder, both of you on equal footing. We do a structured way for you to meet these people, as well as, a little bit informal too in terms of events and things like that. So you get a chance to meet somebody through the program. So that's number one, I think is an important piece. But the biggest piece that makes us different than a traditional accelerator and incubator is we have an in-house research team, about 35 people, give or take, on that team. And what their job is for 8 to 10 week cycles, they're spending a full 8 to 10 weeks coming up with a fully vetted idea of a vertical software. If we launch a vertical software, an industry specific software for this industry, what's the total addressable market? What's the price point? What are customers looking like? What's the appetite for software? What are the investor, abilities for this industry? And once that gets approved, it gets presented in like a 50 or 60 page prospectus report to the co-founders. So to you, essentially, you and the CEO, and you get to claim this idea. So the big idea is that this idea is worth about $1 billion valuation. Nothing would get through our approval process until then. So if you had an idea that you wanted to incubate, maybe a different incubator is the right call. But for us, these businesses are essentially, they're not guaranteed to succeed, but they're very well vetted to succeed because we have good people mixed with a good idea. And then the rest of it is once you claim your company, claim your CEO, co-founder, the 2 of you sign formation docs and get your business started. So the company has legal support from us to open up on day 1. We give $1 million seed round. And then we actually have something called a follow-on fund, or a fund 2, that happens at the end of your first year. It's another $5 million. So it's essentially a de facto Series A. And that is another, access to funding for you. After that, Fractal's not going to lead Series B investment or Series C investment, but we have those VCs that I originally talked about that we raised. We can introduce you to those folks so you can get those VC rounds, but you can also have the autonomy to go where you want with that. And last but not least, we've got a really good support system through our portfolio team. These are subject matter experts that are from recruiting, sales, legal, finance, and they're there to support our founders as they fund their companies to say, hey, if you ever thought about putting a benefits program in place, here's an HR subject matter expert. They can help you do that. So it all rolls back to we're launching good ideas with good people, but the way our model works is we're, essentially not eliminating risks, but definitely, lessening the risk that a startup co-founder would have if they, bootstrapped or went through a less, structured program. So does that make sense, or what are your kind of reactions to that?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. So there are a couple of questions. So first thing first, let's talk about the qualification. So can you tell me about the interview process, like how many rounds and what's the emphasis and what's the acceptance criteria?
Sure. So for CTOs like yourself, usually we go after people that have a computer science degree and a bachelor's or master's degree. So obviously like you, and then progressive promotions through software first companies, junior to senior engineers, to staff or principal engineers. And then at companies like yours where things are obviously going quickly, moving fast. If someone stayed at one company for his or her whole career, I might not call them because there's a little bit of learning other places you go. But then through the interview process for CTOs, how it goes is you start with a recruiter like me. We talk about why you want to be a founder. Hopefully you understand what Fractal can do as a point of utility for you. Then step 2 is an operating partner interview. So that's essentially an operating partner is an internal Fractal employee, but they are former founders, former investors themselves. They understand the startup world. And their goal in your hour-long interview is to talk about your motivations, again, Fractal's model and how it fits with you, and then vet you on a lot of the intangible skills about being a founder. Then third, we do a case study. We do this both for CEOs and CTOs. In the form for CTOs, it is actually a virtual technical interview. We use a company called Karat, K-A-R-A-T, and they essentially set up a kind of a whiteboard working session for you for an hour. That's more of the technical ability. And then you follow that up with our head of engineering, Martin. Martin's former Google, former Lyft head of engineering guy. And he does a systems design interview with you because the CTO, it's your job to build the MVP and the tech stack, right? Mm-hmm. So from there, that interview's pretty much last. We do references after that to qualify from an external standpoint if you're the person we think you are. And then an offer letter to that EIR program comes in.
Okay, so you mentioned about technical strengths and move fast and get promotion, but I guess that startup and let me put it this way: A performer in a big name versus the CCO in a startup, that's different. One of them is the mental capacity, and have you ever designed anything for that?
So I know that's part of the interview with the head of engineering, but also we're kind of push and prod you along that on the way too. There's questions about why you want to do this, about, how have you failed, how have you succeeded and overcome that. But then a lot of the technical ability of like building on the fly and, coming up with a product from nowhere, that comes out in the head of engineering interview after the technical interview to show that you have the coding jobs.
And so what's your selection criteria for the CEO role? I guess is primarily for the business side, right?
The interview process is pretty similar, except for switching out engineering talent. We do things like the executive interview, like our CEO would a lot of times be at the back end of the interview process. Their case study is more focused on fundraising. So, a pitch, essentially building a pitch deck for a Series A or something like that. It kind of changes on and off, but it's more of a presentation than it is specifically a technical interview. And then to roll it back to their profiles, the folks that we go after for the CEO title, they're well-educated. They come from a bachelor's or a master's degree from a top 10 institution in the U.S. usually. We ultimately do have people from outside the U.S. as well. But then from that, they most of the time are product leaders, people that have garnered more promotional responsibility in terms of, building a tech product through a product lens. And then on the other side, we do have big 3 consulting. We pull people from things like Bain, McKinsey, folks that have maybe been engagement managers and worked through that. And we do institutional finance, so investment, people that come from investment banking, or some of those can be a CEO that we would go after. And then last but not least, kind of strategic ops, maybe not a chief of staff, but someone that's been an operations director at a startup or something as they've gone through. But they get vetted just equally as much as the CTOs. So when they ultimately do enter this matching process in the EIR program, you shouldn't worry about the capability of anybody you meet. The bigger thing you're looking for is the matchup. Do we get along personally? Do we have the same ideas for the outcomes of this company? Do you have a specific interest in the vertical that we're going after, or is this just some idea that you saw and you enjoyed? So there's a few questions to go into the matching process, but the idea of capability shouldn't be one of them, because everyone that makes it through us are pretty smart with it people.
Okay, cool. So along with the startup journey, that we understand that a lot of things could happen, including the macro economy and including the individual leadership founders' family situation. So my question is, how do you make sure to monitor the performance along the way, or what if some founder, CEO or CTO, has some performance distortion?
It's a good question. And so I'm going to answer where we're at now and then what would happen in the future. So far, 54 companies, that's 108 people. None of them have had a negative review, right? In terms of launching their companies, things have gone successfully. But if it does get to a spot where, someone's essentially they're not performing, I guess is the word. Mm-hmm. Fractal doesn't specifically have the autonomy in the board seat to just pull them out. Instead, it's, something from the CTO perspective of, hey, here's what my claim is. And since Fractal does hold a board seat or two, they could replace the CEO or CTO, I guess, with someone that's actually in our program. So I don't spend too much time on this, but like, for example, we actually had one CTO fall out of the program because of something in the family that you mentioned, kind of like, not something expected. And this was rare, but we actually had a CTO in the program that was ready to match with a new idea. And he jumped in to be that CTO for that company that was a few months down the road. So again, I don't want to say that you have insurance of a founder, but you definitely have it more than if you were going to bootstrap with some very idealistic savant or something where if he or she left, there goes the company. That's part of us having a little bit of insurance on our side.
Okay, so literally there will be a training to bring out a performer in the company to start a founder. And after that, we just make sure after we meet the qualification that we make sure we are performing. And that's it. When you talk about support, that means anything else that beyond our responsibility and all things that we do not have somebody work for our startup. That is you guys provide a particular team for example, human resource and salary like a hierarchy design and like legal like patent system something. Is that correct?
So I want to be very transparent about this, right? So we're on the same page. Everybody that's on our supporter portfolio team that supports the companies as they move forward, they're Fractal employees. And the big word I would use is enablement. So like our head of engineering wouldn't be an engineer on your team, but he can help you hire engineers. Same thing with like our head recruiter. He's not a person that would ultimately like be an internal recruiter for you, but he sets you up with interview prompts. He sets you up with logins to softwares to find candidates. He sets you up with different kind of equity pitches. There's lots of training to make you a well-rounded founder. And training is maybe the wrong word because some people know it, some people don't from the experiences in their past. But Fractal wants to enable you to do it yourself. So again, like we don't have a bunch of HR professionals that can just jump into your team. Instead, they answer questions for when you're ready to hire an HR professional or a full stack engineer. We give you the ability and the wherewithal to actually do it. So again, our companies don't have to get in terms of headcount like super big because you do have some support, but there's other ways that Fractal can support you from a third party perspective too. So they're not internal employees for you, but they're definitely there to give you a guiding light to what's next.
Okay, cool. So can you tell me how do you divide like C round, A round, and B round? Like is it for a time, like for a specific time frame, or is it based on some DAU, NAU, all those business critical criteria?
So the first seed round is the day you launch. So you've hit this by being part of the program, showing positivity to matching with an idea, matching with a co-founder. The $1 million round comes in day one. And then the Series A or the follow-on fund, however you want to call it, it's milestone based. So MVP, is actually done. Maybe a customer or two waiting in the wings. You'll get more ability to see a little bit of transparency here, but we want to invest in you in this regard. And so from that, the milestones they're not difficult to hit if you're running a company successfully. But that being said, if everything went wrong, before the end of the first year, Fractal would withhold the right that you haven't hit your milestones and, the company's ultimately going to not get the Series A. And so that's the only piece that's tied to any kind of funding. Series B and past that, completely on you and your co-founder. If you want to seek investment early, you want to seek investment from one of our VC partners, we can make those introductions. But on the opposite side too, if it's you have a connection somewhere in the Bay that you really want to pull on as your Series B lead investor, you have the ability to do that as well in the autonomy.
And the compensation for the company is totally from all those funding and the equity pool.
Mm-hmm.
So we are getting paid with what we can raise, not from Fractal, right?
So let's just kind of talk about all the economics to answer that question, right? Mm-hmm. So day one, company gives us $1 million. You actually have earmarked out of that $125,000 that company that Fractal suggests you take as a salary, which is bigger than if you were going to bootstrap most of the time, right? Mm-hmm. So suggest the $125,000 salary. And then from there, we actually have something within the EIR program too, that this is actually from Fractal. If you show up into the program and match quickly to an idea and a person, you show, positivity, momentum. We actually have a $50,000 sign-on bonus for CTOs, and that comes from Fractal, not from your funding, just to incentivize you to start a company. So, first year earnings, you're at $175,000 for you. In terms of the equity piece, this is where we'll get into numbers, and I actually have a follow-up point on this too. I can send you a portal with some of these numbers in it too.
Oh, I appreciate
it. Yeah, I know this is just a lot to send in a call, so I want to make sure that you have something to refer back to. Yeah. So from the $1 million, 18% of the equity goes to you, and 18% goes full founder equity goes to the co-founder. So 36 total. There's 2.5% back for an advisory board seat that you can sell eventually. And then usually 12% is kept back as a pool for employees. So if you wanted to, hire a full stack engineer as your third hire or something, you could give them a point or two of equity to keep them around as the MVP gets built and scaled. And then what Fractal gets out, we get the rest of the equity on our side to make the exit with. And then on Series A, the funding looks the exact same. On that fund two, the same equity terms from that piece. And so at the end of the first year, each founder is worth about $3 million if our valuations hold, because usually at the end of the first year, our companies are valued somewhere in the $20 to $25 million range. So you're worth about $3 million of that. And then that's also when, depending on you, your co-founder's ability, your lifestyle, if you needed to up your salary from your original investment, the next $5 million, that's something you and the co-founder would have to approve with the board. But a lot of times it happens and you can move up to whatever you think is fair as long as it matches to your tables. So a long story short, again, it's not the life-changing equity of being a founder in Fractal. It happens pretty quick, but we also want to support you from a lifestyle perspective that you actually do get that salary, because too many failed, startup ventures happen because personal finance gets out of whack, right? Everything goes through the company and burn rates happen. And essentially you're stressed out because you're solo founding and you're not paying yourself a livable wage and things get on top of you. So that's what we're trying to do in our regard.
Okay, cool. So I guess I got a general idea. So can you give me some example that's some of the graduating companies from your incubator program, that maybe some public news on the milestone product launch or key funding round from other investors?
Sure. So from a name of the company standpoint, most of our companies operate in stealth. So I'll hold some of those back, right? Mm-hmm. But in terms of where they're at, these industries, they're truly all over the place. We've launched things in healthcare, recreation, finance, waste management, cannabis. We've launched industries all over the place, which is always really fun. And then from that regard, the kind of biggest milestones, and it depends when, there's a company that's a day old. So they're really great, but they've not really done anything yet, right? So early on, I think the biggest first milestone after that first funding is hiring your first employee or that first team. Most people hire an engineer within about 2 months, sometimes faster than that, which is pretty good because a lot of investors or a lot of accelerators will tell you to operate without any kind of headcount early, but that puts the stress on the CTO especially. We just don't think that building an engineering organization that way is the right way. So we encourage you to hire help. So those are one of the first big milestones. About 6 months later, MVPs, depending on your timeline and everyone's timeline, MVPs getting built is another big milestone from that side. And then towards the end of the first year, that Series A that's available through the follow-on fund, everyone that's old enough to get that has gotten it. So we're 100% from those companies. And then on a Series B round, we have 2 companies that are actually raising right now, and they're raising through VCs that we've funded through. So I don't know exactly which ones, but the ones that founded us or they helped found us are the ones that have turned down and doubled down their bets on these companies that are at that stage. So I know that's a little vague, but so far, and again, only one company's a day old, so I'm glad they haven't fallen apart yet, but we're 54. All of our companies have been successful and are on timelines to hit tracks of success. And they're all headed towards some kind of valuation. We think at the limited amount, these things get to $200 million valuations at an exit. But the majority of these companies are built to go $1 billion. We'll see if ultimately they get there, acquisitions happen. Your exit it's not completely on you, but the most autonomy towards an exit is on you and your co-founder. because Fractal's got a lot of kind of bets out there on the table. We can't specifically drive every one, so that comes back to you. So when an exit happens, it's ultimately the right call for you. So we've done that. I'm trying to think if there's any other kind of like big things like winning your first customer. That doesn't really have a timeline, but when people have made their first hire or won their first customer, you know, that's always been something that's big and celebrated within the company as well as in Fractal. But again, I can't get into like super specifics per company to exactly give you the timeline for them, but everything's been successful. And then a point on failure, I guess, too, just to bring this up, eventually a company will not, you know, hit where it needs to go in terms of its ultimate valuation perspective. But the thing for the founders that I always want to bring up is, you know, living in America, we've got such a penchant, a positivity or a positive view on the entrepreneurial spirit. And if you're someone that's raised $6 million in VC, that already puts you in the top 1% of VC, of people that have sought VC. Mm-hmm. And so you would be able to, like, if your company did fail, you would be able to get a nice head of engineering job at a place like YouTube or Google. But we want you to, you know, exit your company, not work again. But the failure side is still not bad. It's a nice internal job until you're ready to found your next thing, most likely.
Okay, I got the idea. So do you require any specific domain? For example, if your team has the research team has figured out a business idea that particularly on, for example, computer vision, then do you expect somebody with computer vision and deep learning, reinforcement learning something, and get in the idea something?
So it's interesting how people match with these ideas, because sometimes it's an industry they really understand. They already know the players. They really want to jump into it. Sometimes it has something to do completely with a personal mindset. You know, we had a founder that claimed an alcohol-based business because his dad was a brewer and his dad was a brewer and his grandfather was a brewer. And that was how he was going to continue the family business. And then there's other times where, hey, I truly don't know anything about this industry, but because of the research team and the prospectus report that gets generated, there's so much diligence that's done. You can really feel like an expert by the time you start your company because of the research that's been done. So really matching with this idea, there's something that brings you there. But a lot of times too, for CTOs, it might be more of a, I like this certain CEO and he or she is already matched with something, you know, and like, oh, I don't really have, or I have positivity towards grain farm management or dairy farm management or golf course management or whatever ultimately the company is. But I really like the CEO and I want to work with him or her. Like that can also be a driving point to the industry.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, and I think we are almost running out of time. And I think I got nice information from you, and thank you very much. Do you want to know anything from me or anything you want to talk?
I want to talk next steps if you're up for it.
Oh, okay. As you mentioned, that you can send me some verbal stuff via email and give me more information and as a complimentary of what we are talking here.
Yeah, so here's what I'll do. Just double check. Just making sure. All right, so I will get you that portal. It's based on recaps, so you'll see it. It's highlighted. You can click into that, spend as much time as you can. I would encourage you to spend 2 to 3 hours in here because there's things like vertical previews of ideas that are currently being improved. There's equity economics around founder economics. There's employee economics. There's testimonials. There's so much here. So spend some time. It really will help round out this conversation. But if you want to pull up your calendar too, I would love to get you on the phone with our secondary step, our operating partner, Mike Lotman. I want you to generate like really hardcore, high-level questions from this portal to throw at him because he'll be able to really help you get context for this.
Okay. Yeah, I can tell it's a lot of information and it's pretty much a very critical decision for any A performer in big next because it's totally different lifestyle something. And once you succeed, the return is momentum. Yeah. Yeah,
I agree. And I think Mike can really help lay some of that stuff out. So I've got his calendar up. If you want to look at yours, I want to schedule you for an hour-long video call.
Okay.
I've got like Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning.
Maybe Wednesday afternoon.
How about, can you do 1:30 Pacific?
PDT, 1:30. Okay. Yeah, I think it will work.
Okay.
If for any urgent things that it doesn't work, then it would be nice if I can get a modified permission.
Yeah, Michael, if you respond back to the email, Mike will be able to have that. I'm actually going to be on vacation, so I'm going to be out of it, but Mike will be able to help you modify it.
Okay.
So I'll drop the invite right after we get off this phone call, and then from there you can, I'll give Mike that thought process. So we'll do this, and then, okay. Yeah, I'll send this email right now. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to hit me with an email. I'm going to introduce you to Mike via that calendar link too, so you'll get his email. If you have any questions burning before the call, feel free to ask, okay?
Sure, and thank you very much, and enjoy your vacation.
Thank you so much. I feel like I earned this one finally, so I'm really excited to take it. But it's been wonderful getting a chance to talk with you. And until we talk again, take care, okay?
Okay.
All right, bye.
Bye.